Join us at the Meaningful Minute live event Sunday night, October 6th in Brooklyn, New York, featuring Rabbi Shlomo Farki and Maya Namdar. Admission is free. Register now at meaningfulminute.org. We can't wait to see you there.
He specifically dated non-Jewish women because he didn't want to be pulled back into it. He also didn't want to get married, and he knew Jewish girls typically wanted to get married and have kids. He was totally against that. He was totally against religion in general.
He was really traumatized by what had happened to him, to the point where he purposely did not want to date a Jew, even if it was by chance.
Yeah.
Even if that person didn't even practice Judaism.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, he was like, okay, you're like blonde and blue eyes and German, English, Irish background, and you're an atheist. It's great.
Well, it's funny how things turned out, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Meaningful People podcast. I'm so happy that you are here. Myself and Momo sat down with Kylie Ora Lobell for this episode. Before we get to that, make sure to leave a comment on this week's episode of the podcast. Once again, where are you watching this episode from? Comment below where you're watching this from, and you're entering to win $250 cash prize. We have chosen so many winners so far for the last few weeks. So make sure you comment below, where are you watching this episode from? Where in the world? Even if you answered in the past, answer again and you get another chance to win. Make sure to comment that below and like this video. Kylie Ora Lobell, who is now, spoiler alert, a Frum Yid, did not grow up that way whatsoever. At one point, who was a stark atheist. And she was dating a guy who really had no interest in Judaism himself, to the point where he really didn't want to date anybody Jewish so that he would never be brought back to that world. Well, funny how things work out, ain't it? Buckle up for this episode of the Meaningful People podcast. Yes, this episode is sponsored by my good friend Isaac Newman, L'zecher Nishmas, his mother, Rechama Paramalkolea, Bas Aryeh Leib. Her neshama should have an aliyah. This episode is sponsored by my friends at Colel Chabad. Let me hear that sound. Yes, because every time you give tzedakah, cha-ching, exactly. That's what happens up there and over here when you're using the Pushka app. That is pushka.cc/meaningful. Pushka.cc/meaningful. Download the Colel Chabad today. Colel Chabad, who is actually one of the big sponsors of our upcoming event, October 6th in Brooklyn with Rabbi Farki and Maya Namdar, which I hope to see you by. Colel Chabad is there for the community. They are feeding the needy people in Eretz Yisrael. So much of the work they do would not be possible without you, though. So make sure to download the Pushka app today. Give tzedakah every single day before you're going on a long trip, before you're going to a work meeting, before whatever it is, before your kid's first date, before your first date. Download pushka.cc/meaningful. Hit the link in the show notes below. And of course, a quick word from my friends at Toveedo.com. Right now, stop what you're doing, head to Toveedo.com, check out what they are about. If you have kids and they are watching things on Netflix, YouTube, that doesn't have to happen anymore. Thank God for Toveedo. Thank God for them, really. They've created this platform with good content, healthy content for your Jewish child. You don't need to turn to the other stuff out there. We don't know what's infused in that. Actually, we do know. And it's not the stuff that we want our home to be filled with. Stop what you're doing. Download the Toveedo app right now. Go ahead to Toveedo.com right now. Use promo code MM10 for 10% off your subscription. That is at Toveedo.com. Now, enjoy the rest of this episode. You are listening to the Meaningful People podcast.
The podcast featuring our nation's most impactful, influential,
and meaningful people. We are here with Kylie Ora Lobell, joining us from California. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet us.
Kylie Ora, Fornia.
Oh, Kylie Ora Fornia. That's a good one. Yeah, it would make sense. Of course. It would make sense. You never thought about it. Momo has things that go through his head that nobody thinks about. So no worries.
It's just what I heard when you said Kylie Ora from California.
You should get that checked out, Momo.
It's just what I heard.
Well, yeah.
There you go.
We are very excited to hear about your story. I've been following you on Twitter, or formerly Twitter X, for a while, and I know there's a journey. I know there's a story, and I'm very, very excited about this opportunity to hear about it. So please grace us from the beginning. Where What was your upbringing like?
I had a Catholic grandmother on one side, and then on the other side, it was just Christian. But my parents weren't really religious. We did, Xmas and Easter and things like that, but it was all about gifts and nothing about religion. My Catholic grandmother did try to make me Catholic. She said that she baptized me in her kitchen sink because my parents wouldn't. But my baptism didn't work. I don't know what that meant. If I splashed the water away and said, "Hey, I'm going to be a Jew," but I just didn't take to it. I didn't really like going to church with her or anything. But yeah, I grew up in Baltimore, which was, I learned later is a very Orthodox Jewish area, very, secular, just into pop culture. And I experienced a lot of loneliness, isolation, depression in the suburbs there. I became an atheist when I was 12 because my parents got divorced, even though I prayed for them not to. My grandmother died, even though I prayed for her not to. So my relationship with God was severed at an early age. And I just decided, hey, I'm a teenager now and I'm going to stop believing in God.
It's interesting. Like for the relationship with God at a young age to already have like a label of like you attempted, and like any, I think, young child would, it didn't work. So I'm out. But that sounds a little unique that you just sort of go ahead and say, hey, you know what? Now I'm an atheist.
Yeah, my friend from camp, who I thought was cool, brought it up to me. She's like, I don't believe in God. But before that point, I didn't think it was negotiable. I didn't think there was any other choice. I thought that God existed and that was it. But then I thought back and I thought, yeah, I also thought Santa Claus existed and I thought that the Easter Bunny existed and I learned that all those things were fake. So why couldn't God be in the same category? And when you're a teenager, you're just very certain of yourself and you think you're sophisticated and have all the right views.
I imagine becoming, I guess, an atheist didn't necessarily solve the problems that you had, the ones of loneliness and depression, did it?
No. So it exacerbated it. So, I didn't really have a strong relationship with God before. I didn't really learn any sophisticated version of him other than that he's up in the sky. And whenever I would say, "Oh my God," my dad would say, "No, you say gosh." And that was pretty much it. And I also learned through Catholicism, just some disturbing things like that babies were born in sin and they go to hell if you don't baptize them. That freaked me out. So I remember as an atheist, I would lay in bed at night and I would just think about the eternal darkness that waited me when I died. And I was like, I'm suffering. I'm a depressed teenager. What is this for? Obviously, it's for nothing. And that when you die, it's just blackness and that's it. There's nothing to look forward to. So it made things worse. And also, I didn't ever hand control over to God. So I thought everything was in my control. And if I was having a bad day, it was my fault. I had no gratitude. If I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, I thought, this is it. I'm going to have a bad day. And it would. My life would play out that way. So it was actually didn't help at all. And it's not like there's a community of atheists you can go to every week and have kiddish. So it's super isolating to be, an atheist.
I'm actually surprised to learn that there's no community.
There is no atheist community. I feel like there should be. I mean, like, no, chas v'shalom. Like, my bad. There shouldn't be, but I would think that there is like a strong atheist community. Maybe it's like online,
or better, maybe that we don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, Kylie. Let's not publicize where they are.
Yeah. There's a group in LA called, I think, Atheists United, which is hilarious. And they sponsor highways. Sometimes you'll see their sign and I'm like, I don't even know what this is.
Sponsoring highways. That's.
But when they get stuck in traffic, they don't say, "Oh my gosh."
No.
Well,
I don't know what
I guess, it sounds like you're, I don't know. I imagine you said your parents were divorced. So you were maybe living back and forth, both your father and your mother. Were they sort of more devout, religious Christian? And if so, did they know that you labeled yourself as an atheist? Is that considered like how a Jewish family would consider a child going off the derech in a way? Like, is that what it was?
No, they didn't really care because they didn't care. They didn't really have strong beliefs. And then my grandmother would always try to drag me back to church and I would just say, no, I'm not going. And I would just get really upset because I'd be depressed and she would say, I hope you feel better. God bless you. And I would feel like, well, that didn't help at all. I don't believe in God. And, I just felt very misunderstood and isolated. So, no, but there was no like going off the derech or anything like that.
How old were you when you were going? You said you were 12, 13 years old during this crisis. Mm-hmm. When did it start changing? Did anything significant happen in your life that changed things for you?
That made me go from believing in God to not believing in God?
Or once you're not believing in God, maybe starting to believe in again.
Yeah, so that didn't happen until I was 21. So my teenage years were very fraught. I had depression in ninth grade. I was suicidal. And then I just had anxiety and depression throughout college. Even though I was very accomplished, I was getting good grades. I interned at The Onion and The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. And I was doing everything I was meant to do. And yet I was also miserable.
That's really cool. Interning at The Onion and Jon Stewart. Tell us about that. You're working in you're working ultimately in the entertainment industry.
Yeah. So I went to SUNY Purchase, State University of New York at Purchase College. For anyone who doesn't live in New York, they don't know that usually. And I got these internships in the city, first at CBS and then The Daily Show. And I wanted to be a TV producer and work in comedy. And I thought, this is going to be great. It actually wasn't at all. Jon Stewart was nice, but first of all, Viacom got sued for this. They would make us do menial tasks for free, which they weren't allowed to do, like taking out the trash and things like that. And they actually got sued later on by a bunch of interns. But anyway, they would make me do picking up groceries and schlepping gift bags and logging tapes, and it's just not glamorous at all. And then I'd cut up bagels for the writers.
And not funny.
And when you walk into the room, nobody even acknowledged you. So I just felt like it was a very cold environment. And I didn't like my internship, but the good thing that came out of it, looking back, is that one night I went to a comedy show after my internship ended, and there was a man and he was talking with his group of friends, and he mentioned, I interned at Colbert. And I heard that, and I walk over to him and I'm like, you interned at Colbert? I interned at The Daily Show. And at both of us at the same time go, I hated it. And
That's
that
great.
Turned out to be my future husband. And it was really amazing, because when you're at when you're at those internships, you think everybody around you loves it, and you feel like you're the jerk for not liking it. And then to go through that traumatizing experience and meet someone who also had the same experience, you're like, oh, I'm not the crazy one.
How did you, I guess, all the while going through, college and interning, and you're dealing with anxiety and depression, how did you deal with those feelings practically? I know you mentioned you're also suicidal. How did you deal with that?
I went to therapy and it helped a bit. Later on, incorporating a belief in God with therapy was actually what I needed. But just going to therapy at my school, it was free. And that was it. I was still a mess though. I tried a number of antidepressants, and some of them worked better than others, but some of them, made it worse. So that was just really tough. And then living in New York City at 21 years old, when you're broke and lost in life and having an existential crisis, it's not like the Haredi world where you are set up and you have strong family and you get married and you know what you want to do. When you're in the secular world, you have all these choices, and it's so overwhelming, and there's no clear path. It's not coherent what you're supposed to do with your life, if you don't have morality and people guiding you and models to look at. So yeah, it was just very overwhelming for me.
So this guy you meet, was he religious at all? What was his background?
Yeah, so I learned that he was Jewish, and I'm like, of course I like him, because growing up, when I went to high school, I went to a high school that was very Jewish, a magnet school in Baltimore. And I was just immediately like, I feel much more at home with these people, because in my house, when we had dinner, for example, if we had dinner together, everyone was quiet. All you could hear was the forks clinking. I would just be like, why isn't anyone talking? And then I meet Jews, and they were in a good way loud, and they were expressive, and they were talking over each other.
We can't stop talking. They make their own talk shows. They start their own podcasts. It's no end.
but they were fun. They were colorful, lively. So immediately I connected with them and then dated some Jewish boys in high school. I went to a Pesach Seder with my very reform Jewish boyfriend at the time, and they had the jarred gefilte fish, which was disgusting, and then the Manischewitz, which is disgusting. So I didn't really get like a real Pesach Seder, but I got
that's
a little
real.
bit.
That is real.
That is not real.
That's too real.
The jar gefilte
That
fish.
gets real quick.
Yeah.
Jar gefilte fish. They don't even serve that in prison, you know. The good jar gefilte fish is like reserved for other people. I don't know. But very interesting. So you felt like at home around Jewish people, but I imagine that you didn't really think that would lead to a life of religion, did it?
No, not at all. I mean, and when I went to the Holocaust Museum as a child, since we were in Baltimore, we were near DC, and we went to the National Holocaust Museum, and I was so deeply affected by what I saw, the videos and things like that, the shoes on the ground. I had nightmares for years about it. So all that was kind of strange. And then, I just felt much more at home with Jewish people and liked Woody Allen movies and things like that. And so when I met my husband, he was off the derech, as we talked about earlier, not practicing. Basically, he had a whole trauma where he was in the yeshiva system. And when he got to high school, his religious grades were good, and he was very much spiritual, especially because he's Sephardic, and he had a Moroccan Rabbi Asher Abitan in Long Beach, Long Island, who kept him connected. So he loved his Sephardic stuff. And then he went to this yeshiva where they were trying to be a college prep school, and they kicked him and some other students out in the middle of the year for not having good enough grades. Later on, they apologized to my husband, Daniel, and the other students for doing this. But then he was shifted around, and no other yeshiva would take him because they thought that something was wrong with him. They thought his parents were lying. They thought he was a drug addict or something horrible like that. He ended up in a very bad yeshiva that has since closed down, where when he was davening in the morning, the other kids would be throwing spitballs at him because they were actually not great kids. And they would just always be getting into trouble. He eventually ended up in public school, tried to stay connected through different Jewish groups, didn't feel like he fit in. Eventually, he also decided to start doing stand-up comedy. And if he wanted to make it in stand-up, you had to perform on Shabbat. So that was kind of the last thing. He's like, you know what, I'm just going to give up Shabbat so that I can be a comedian. And by the time he met me, he had been doing that for 11 years.
Wow. It reminds me of a story I heard once, that there was a principal of a school, of a yeshiva, who was on the brink of kicking someone out, one of the students out of the yeshiva. And he came to, I think it was Rabbi Aaron Leib Steinman in Israel, and wanted like the Gadol's blessing to go through with, this decision to kick the boy out of the yeshiva. So Rabbi Aaron Leib Steinman asked the principal, well, what's the kid's name? So he named the child, first name, last name. He says, no. What's his first name? The son of his mother's name. Like, what's his Tehillim name? So the principal says, I don't know. Rabbi Aaron Leib says, you're on the brink. You're considering kicking someone out of yeshiva, and you haven't been davening Tehillim. You haven't been davening for him and making sure that this is actually what's best for the child. You're not ready to kick him out of yeshiva. And like, this is Daniel's story is clear. There's real ramifications to decisions like that.
Yeah, looking back, I know that it was all part of his story and our story. But yeah, that was just very hard for him. And years later, when we lived in LA, we met a rabbi who knew the head of the school. And he said, there was so much pressure on me at the time. I regret it. I'm so glad that you came back. Who knows what happened to the other students? But yeah, that's really important.
We'll be right back to this episode. Quick word from my friends at Lema'an Achai. Rosh Hashanah is almost here, and our actions are being weighed. The time to act is now. Families in Israel are facing major crisis right now. Poverty, the uncertainty, where they're going to be, the war. The time that we need to step in is right now. Lema'an Achai has been the address where the people of Eretz Yisrael have turned to for the last 25 years. And like I said, right now is a time that they need our help because they cannot do it alone. So make sure to act now. Head to Lema'an Achai's website, hit the link in the show notes below, and make a donation. Let's take care of our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael. And may it be in that merit and that schus that your family should be taken care of. That the generosity that you show towards our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael through Lema'an Achai, your family is well taken care of. And you should have a beautiful, beautiful upcoming year. Head to the link in the show notes of this episode and support Lema'an Achai. So, you're driving in that parking lot once again. Season's going out, your grocery of choice. And you're backing into the spot and you thought there was more room. And boom, you hit the car. Well, you take out that notepad, which you've done before because this isn't the first time. And you start writing a note, you leave your phone number, you say, I'm so sorry. Maybe you even leave a smiley face. You put that note in the windshield and you go on your day. Well, weeks pass, months pass, maybe even a year. And nobody has reached out to say, hey, you hit my car and I need to be paid back for that. And you're not feeling so comfortable about that because you damaged someone's property. And now it's Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur time and you owe somebody something. Well, insert nechtal. Nechtal is the halachic solution for people who owe somebody money but can't find them to pay them back. You give a donation, the right amount that you owe to nechtal, and the group of Beis Din withhold that money for the rightful owner, and they even give out that money as interest-free loans to people who are in need. This is a beautiful organization that is backed by leading Rabbanim, Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein, Harav Meir Tzvi Bergman, Harav Michal Steinmetz. This organization is one like I've never heard before, and they are really addressing an important need. Whether it's an unpaid wage, damaging someone's property, you give the money to nechtal, that money is held. And it speaks about this in Gemaras, about how this is what you need to do when you can't find the person that you're supposed to pay back. Go ahead to Nechtal's website. Hit the link in the show notes below. Make that donation. If you're not sure exactly how much you're supposed to be giving, give them a call today. The phone number is down below in the description in the show notes of this episode. Make sure to go ahead and give them a call to find out. But thank you, Nechtal, for being there for us. A shout out to my friends at Keren Hashana. Okay, so 71 years ago, the Lubavitch Rebbe made sure to institute something that makes sure every single Yid is giving tzedakah every single day. And that's really what Keren Hashana is. You know, Rabbi Eli Stefanski says it's not about the daf, it's about the yomi. So this is the same thing with tzedakah. It's not about the amount that you're giving. It's the fact that you should be giving to tzedakah every single day. And that's what Keren Hashana is. And it's really something to think about, because even if we do resolve to say, you know what, we're going to give tzedakah every single day, it's sometimes very easy to forget. So that's where Keren Hashana comes in, and this is how it works. Head to mykerenhashana.com. You can hit a link in the show notes of this episode and sign up. Become a giver. The money is distributed by the Machne Israel Chabad headquarters in support of the Shluchim and all of the Shluchim activities around the world. Make sure to go to mykerenhashana.com today. Become a giver. Become a giver every single day. Not one day should go by where you are not a giver. And that's what Keren Hashana is all about. That is what the Rebbe instituted 71 years ago. So it seems like Daniel grew up, like, you'd say more religious, from like mainstream, Orthodox.
I'd say Sephardic, traditional, but
Okay.
then his school was more like Haredi.
Very interesting.
Mhm.
Okay, so you get, I guess you meet at this comedy club and this comedy show, and you start going out instantly.
I actually started interning at his radio show because I was very bored in my senior year of college, and he had started this radio show, the first podcast for comedy, and he started in 2004, and he had on like 1,000 different comedians.
Well, he had a podcast in 2004.
In 2004, yeah, he was one
Wow,
of
that's
the
gotta be
first
like
podcast and the first comedy podcast.
Well, and that's it's got
Early adopter.
literally.
Yeah.
Wow. Sheesh. Well, what does he say that's next? Because I'm just gonna follow this guy.
I'm not sure.
So
Something
you're
with
interning
AI.
there.
Got him on the line.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, he had on like George Carlin and all these impressive people. And so I started booking his show. I graduated from college. Then I moved to the city to be with him. We started dating. And he didn't he specifically dated non-Jewish women. So that was like a check for me. Like, good, you're not Jewish, because he didn't want to be pulled back into it. He also didn't want to get married, and he knew Jewish girls typically wanted to get married and have kids. He was totally against that. And he was totally against religion in general. So
he was really traumatized by what had happened to him, to the point where he purposely did not want to date a Jew, even if it was by chance.
Yeah.
Even if that person didn't even practice Judaism.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, he was like, okay, you're like blonde and blue eyes and German, English, Irish background, and you're an atheist. That's great.
Well, it's funny how things turned out, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I guess explain to me how the things progressed to where we are today, I guess.
Yeah. So he made a comment early on that he's like, this was the one thing he held on to, which I find is often the case. Even if people are secular, he said, I don't want to get married, but if I did, it would have to be to a Jewish girl. And that threw me off. I was like, why would, first of all, I was 21 years old. No plans to get married or anything like that. Never fantasized about my wedding or anything. But I was just upset about that, because I was like, okay, well, one day we could, years from now, go in that direction, and that hurt me. I had that comment in my mind, and I was like, why can't love conquer all? I don't get it. And he explained to me that because his grandmother was in the Holocaust and he went to a Jewish school, that ultimately, if he had to make the decision, it would be to marry a Jewish girl. But anyway, as I said, that wasn't even on my radar. And then basically what happened was,
it's amazing how ingraining. It's amazing how ingraining the words and the lessons of a Jewish grandmother can be. Mm-hmm. I'm just astonished by that.
It always goes back to the bubby.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she escaped on a train full of Nazis because she had blue eyes and blonde hair, and so she was passing in Austria. And she had a very harrowing story. So
it's so interesting. My grandmother as well. She had blue eyes and blonde hair as well, and she was taken off the line because they thought she was German, and she ended up surviving the war. It's a very similar story. That's crazy. Blue eyes and blonde hair, like,
yeah. I mean, that's sad that that's how they differentiated if people were worth something. But yeah, so I had that in my mind. But then also, it was just one Friday, we were broke. And he said, do you want to go to this place called Chabad for a free Friday night dinner? And I said, what's Chabad? and I was like, I thought you didn't like religion. Right? What was that?
This is in New York.
Yeah. And we lived in Bushwick, and that was in Williamsburg on Bedford Avenue. And I was like, I thought you didn't like religion. He's like, well, you can just go to Chabad. They're really nice. They don't pressure you to be religious or anything. He had met the rabbi because that previous Yom Kippur, he decided he had a very spiritual experience davening on the beach in Long Beach. And he said, Hashem, I'm going to keep one Shabbat this year. And then he forgot all about it. And then he just randomly met this rabbi on Bedford Avenue because he would do comedy shows there. And he told the rabbi, I told God, I'm going to keep one Shabbat this year. I'll come to you sometime. And he kept putting it off. And then he finally went, and he loved it. The rabbi was so nice. They would joke around together. And so when I came into his life, it was like a few months after that. And he said, let's just go tonight. Just, if the rabbi asks, just tell him you're Jewish, which was hilarious. Like, not that the rabbi would have cared because he was such a great guy. And we went. And
do you want to name him? Do you want to say his name?
Yeah, Rabbi Shmuley Lane of Chabad of North Brooklyn.
Wow.
Yeah. One thing that always struck me as funny, which I didn't understand at the time, is he's like, all my friends are so far away, and they were in Crown Heights. And later on, I'm thinking like I've been to Chabad of, Aruba. It's like, my friends are so far away.
I know, but he's so close, but so far. That's the only difference. People in Aruba, they're in Aruba. This guy's in Brooklyn, but he's in North Brooklyn,
Yeah.
So you went to that. You went to that Chabad.
Yeah, we went to Chabad. It was full, like it was his family. They looked religious. Like it reminded me of that scene in Annie Hall with the anti-Semitic grandmother who looks at Woody Allen and he looks like a black hat rabbi. That's what they looked like. And
Yeah.
I'd seen that a little bit in Baltimore. I'd always see Orthodox Jews walking with their kids. I noticed, I'm like, why are they always wearing black? They have a bunch of kids. How do they do that? Aren't they hot? Where are they always walking to? It was just Shabbat. That's all it was. But yeah, so I didn't really have experience. I also would go to Satmar Williamsburg sometimes, but he didn't look like that. So I didn't know there was all these like differentiations. But he was super nice to me. And then just sitting around the table, it was his family. There were hipsters because it was Williamsburg. There were businessmen. And everyone was just so lovely and kind. And the food was amazing. The challah, the chicken soup. And I just felt this warmth inside of me that I'd never felt before. And for some reason I thought, wow, this is God. Like this is this feeling that I'm having. And after that, I was like, Danny, I want to go back like every week. So that's when the trouble started.
So this chapter we're calling Trouble, where Danny's like, I just wanted a free meal, and now this girl is falling in love with Chabad and Hashem. So talk to us about, I guess, that trouble.
Yeah. I then went to his parents' house for Shabbat. Loved it. Again, people talking over each other, laughing. There was, I didn't pace myself. So I was so full at the end. All the foods were so exotic. Like they had like Turkish delights, which I'd never had before. I just had like the American diet of hamburgers and pizza and things like that. But it was just also like cool and interesting. And we would go to the Chabad. I'd hear the rabbi speak about Torah. That was really just interesting. It was starting to answer all these questions I had in my head. Like, why do bad things happen to good people? I was starting to reconcile why my grandma died when she died, why my parents got divorced, that everything was for the best. And the main thing was that I felt like I could hand over the control to God, whereas before it was all on me. And now I could say, you know what? If things are happening, God wants it to happen. He's in control. I'm going to do my best. But at the end of the day, he decides. And I just really started to see that. For instance, we were getting kicked out of our apartment in Brooklyn because the landlady's rent collector had taken all our rent, and from all the other tenants too. She made us pay in cash, and then she ended up going to jail. And Danny had lost all the receipts. So he said, the landlord said that if you want to stay in this apartment, you owe us thousands of dollars, which we thankfully were able to borrow from friends. And she said, if you are able to one day find the receipt, then I will give you all your money back. And one day when we had to leave our apartment because our neighbor was being intimidating and threatening us, we live next to a gangster in Brooklyn. I cleaned the apartment and found all the receipts. And at that exact moment, I'm like, this is God. Like God gave me the receipts so that we could leave in this exact moment. So I was just starting to see God everywhere that I looked. I thought, how did I not see this before? It's so clear. Like if you go to the beach on a nice day or see some nice trees or something, like that's so clearly God. And so I told Danny, you know what? I think I want to convert.
Well, like when you were saying that's God, I'm just curious because you're jumping right into the conversion, but like when you were saying, oh, that's God, that's God, that's God, it sounds like you're also saying like that's Hashem. Like specifically that it was the Jewish, belief, not just a God, but it's Hashem. Is that how it was for you?
Yeah. And I learned, that with other beliefs, it felt like God was just far away in the sky, didn't intervene in your daily life. And then with Judaism, I learned like every time you say a bracha, you can thank God. If you find a parking space, you can thank God. Like there's no reason why God has to stay out of your everyday life. He's always there. And I found that to be super helpful and incredible. And, even if I pray for something and it didn't happen, I'd say, this is for the best. So I went from being an atheist to then believing in God because of the Torah.
You mentioned seeing God at the beach or at a beautiful tree. It's reminding me of a beautiful idea that I heard once. The Mishnah says that Kol ha-mafsik mi mishnasei which means that anyone that interrupts their learning to comment, Kama no ilon zeh, how beautiful is this tree? The Mishnah concludes, it's meschayev benafshay, which the simple meaning means, that's a death penalty, which is a very severe treatment of someone that interrupts their studying to comment on the beauty of the tree. And I heard once al derech hachasidus to explain beautifully that if commenting on the tree, if admiring God's world and nature of Kama no ilon zeh, if that is an interruption from your learning, if that is a hefsik mimishnasei, then it's meschayev benafshe. Then you're not living in God's world. Mm-hmm. If Kama no ilon zeh is a hefsik mimishnasei, then it's meschayev benafshe. Then you're not participating in God's world. But if the beauty and the admiration for that tree is part of God's manifestation in this world, then that is the ultimate dwelling of God's presence.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I felt like my eyes were open. I went from black and white to color with everything that I was learning, and it explains so much. Whereas with other religions, sometimes you ask questions and they're like, just shut up and assume that everything is true. With Judaism, I saw like there's a huge grappling, and you could ask anything, nothing was off limits, and the rabbis would answer you.
That's amazing. And I'm curious, what was Danny's response when you said to him, I think I want to convert?
He said, don't do Reform. It's not good enough. Don't do Orthodox. I'm not going to be drawn back into that. It's too hardcore, too conservative. And so I went our first meeting was just someone I Googled, conservative rabbi in New York City. We went to a deli. I thought it was kosher at the time. Looking back, it probably wasn't, like a Jewish deli in New York.
By the way, people like yell at me when I do that. I am a big Googler also. I do like doctor near me, like dentist near me. And everyone's like, no, you need referrals. You did the same thing. Rabbi near me. Like, yeah, it shows you someone a mile away. Perfect.
Yeah.
Let's endorse that practice.
Yes. Search things near you. Let Google run your life.
Yeah. I don't even know if it was Google. Maybe it was, I don't know, dog
Bing?
pile. No, it was
You were
Google.
using Bing?
No. So yeah, we met up with this rabbi. It was very comical. He walks in, he doesn't even say hello. We're sitting there. We think it's going to be this serious meeting. The first thing he goes is, he turns to Danny, he goes, do you like farmer's cheese? Danny's like, yeah. He's like, okay, you're halfway there. And then we're like, what? And then he goes to me, he goes, do you like Xmas? Are you going to miss it? I'm like, no, not really. After my parents got divorced, I didn't really like it anyway. And he's like, good. Okay. I converted this, and this person. I converted Nancy Sinatra. I don't know if she's still a Jew, but anyway, it's going to cost $100 a class. This is when you can start. And then he turns to Danny again. He goes, so do you like tongue? And Danny's like, yeah. And he goes, okay, you're all the way there. You're set. And then he just like gets up and leaves. And we're like, what was that? And I'm like, I can't even afford $100 a session, let alone this seems like kind of a scam. He doesn't even know if not Nancy Sinatra's still Jewish. I'm like, I thought once you converted, you're a Jew, but okay.
And second of all, it's also erroneous because if he likes farmer's cheese, I mean, like, you're lactose intolerant if you're a Jew, and you do not like farmer's cheese. So you are not halfway there. So he was definitely a scam.
Yeah. It was hilarious though. And then I Googled another conservative rabbi. I went to him and he's like, well, I won't even start converting you until you're ready to get married. I'm like, well, I just want to learn already. And so he said, go to 92nd Street Y. They're having an intro to Judaism class. I go there and I was surrounded by guys with like very good looking Russian model type girlfriends who were like, can I still eat lobster? Things like that. So that was funny. But the rabbi who taught it was a modern Orthodox rabbi. He had a knitted yarmulke with a fish logo on it. He was a very nice guy. And I really enjoyed what I was learning. And I told him my conundrum and I said, look, my boyfriend doesn't want to be drawn back into this, but I'm really drawn to it. So what should I do? And he said, just again with Google, just look up on Google synagogue near me and see what comes up. And if you can keep learning, because the program ended after like 6 months or something. I did that. I called the shul that came up, which was the Greenpoint shul, because I lived in Bushwick. And the rabbi called me up, Rabbi Maurice Applebaum. He called me up immediately. He was very nice. And I said, do you happen to do conversion classes? And he said, yeah, which was super strange. It's not like a normal thing that Orthodox shuls do. And I didn't know it was Orthodox at the time. So I said to Danny, yeah, I'm going to try this shul out on Saturday if you want to come. And he's like, is it Orthodox? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just going to go. And he said, okay, let me know. And I went, and indeed it was modern Orthodox.
I guess he had found out.
Yeah, eventually he found out. And he's like, I'm going to come with you. And I started taking classes with the rabbi. He was very nice. He was a chaplain. He was soft-spoken, was learning a lot that I really enjoyed. There's just so many lessons you can learn from them. And I thought it was fascinating, like how Noah took all those years to build it because he was supposed to get people to repent, like Abraham. But just I was learning, the Rashi and everything deeper than that. And I just loved it. I loved all the commentary. And I kept going. And then several weeks into the class, he's like, that's it. I'm putting a stop to this because if you convert and you become Orthodox, we can't be together because my comedy career will go down the drain if I can't perform on Friday nights. I also just don't want to be drawn back into this lifestyle. So he went with the intention to put an end to it, make the rabbi upset, make the rabbi yell at us so we'd never come back. And he goes off on Rabbi Applebaum and says, I was kicked out of yeshiva. I had all these traumatizing experiences. She shouldn't be doing this. I don't want her to do this, blah, blah, blah. And after like 5 minutes, the rabbi's just like, it's okay. I understand if you never want to come back. What happened to you was terrible. And if you don't ever want to come back, that's okay with me. And Danny was taken off guard. And he's like, okay, this guy's really nice. He's the first rabbi who's ever really listened to me about this, and maybe I'll come.
I guess that's how you disarm somebody. Reverse, as Michael Scott would say, reverse psychology.
Yeah. I don't think he was trying to do that. I think he was just like, yeah,
sounds
I
like
get
he was
it.
a really genuine.
It was genuine.
Person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll be right back to this episode with my friend Robin. But first, a quick word from my friends at Chofetz Chaim Heritage Foundation. Next week, next Shabbos, depends when you're listening to this, is the last Shabbos of the year, before Rosh Hashanah. And we know that in the last Shabbos of the year is the time to take something upon yourselves as a family, as a people, that we are going to do for the next coming year. Now, you're sitting around the Shabbos table, right? You want that Shabbos table to be filled with Kedusha, with conversations of happiness and laughter. You don't want to be that family that's just talking bad about people and criticizing, oh, you saw what the Schwarzes are driving? They're driving a Lexus these days. No. Aderaba, you want to do the opposite. You want to make sure you're talking positive about people. And Chofetz Chaim Heritage Foundation has a program to make sure you do exactly that. And they're going to provide for you exactly what you need to do that. Aderaba, you want to make sure that at your Shabbos table, you're speaking positively. Not for 1 week, not for 2 weeks, for the entire year. This is an amazing new program by Chofetz Chaim Heritage Foundation. Head to cchf.global/Aderaba. You're going to go ahead and hit the link in the show notes of this episode. Sign up. I saw already over 2,800 people have signed up for this program. Myself and my family will be signing up as well. Aderaba, let's flip it upside down, guys. No more negative speech at that Shabbos table. Time for only positive. Yom Tov season is right around the corner and your appliances are in full force. But you got one of them that's making some noises. You got one of them that's maybe blowing some smoke. One of them is saying, I got no more in me. I can't do it anymore. That's when you call Town Appliance. Actually, before then is when you call Town Appliance. But Town Appliance understands the needs of the Jewish community and they understand that things happen last second and they are there for you. You're going to head to townappliance.com. Whether it's a new construction or you're trying to replace some appliances in your home, Town Appliance is the go-to place. Ever since 1979, Town Appliance has been doing this. Let me tell you something, guys. I was born in 1995. I know I'm dating myself. Town Appliance has been doing this. Wait for it. 16 years before I was born. Did I get that math right? Does somebody want to fact check me? Is it 16 years? 1980, 1995, that's 15, 1970. 16 years. Yeah, I got it right. 16 years. Guess what? Math. Nobody likes doing math. And nobody likes trying to fix their appliances. And nobody likes creating their own appliances. So you go to Town Appliance and you go to math professionals and you go to a car mechanic when your car's not working. you go to the best. That is townappliance.com. Head to townappliance.com. Did you ever speak to that rabbi about it's a very, I don't want to say gutsy way to go, because like if you put yourself in that rabbi's shoes, so here's basically a neshama and one that's wanting to become a neshama, or realize that, and he basically, what he said is something that could lead to him never seeing both of you again.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very bold statement. You ever get the chance to speak to him about it?
No, I think his perspective was just like this. Danny felt like nobody ever heard him. So let me hear him out and validate him. And he also said, I grew up Orthodox. I'm still Orthodox. I really enjoy it. And now that you're an adult, you can make your own choices. So I think that resonated with Danny. He started to remember what he really loved as a kid, like davening, how it would calm him down, and things like that. Like he was always the one in his family, like, is this food kosher? Are we keeping kosher? Are we doing a good job and keeping people in check? And
right.
And so he was kind of seeing that and returning to that. But he still fought me. He would start coming to class, but then he fought me every single step of the way with my observance. Like I started trying to keep kosher and he wouldn't. And then he had a very crazy experience where one day he ate chicken at Whole Foods and he comes home in a panic attack and he's like, I feel the chicken's soul. I can't eat non-kosher chicken anymore. I felt its soul. It's hurting me. I was like, okay, that sounds nuts, but whatever is going to get you to start keeping kosher with chicken.
It's so like how things changed. Like you started trying to get him to be more observant while you're not even yet Jewish, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see the irony in that?
Yeah. I mean, I just saw how good it was for me. Like I was a workaholic, always trying to be like an overachiever. And so I would even work on Friday nights and then I'm like, nope, not going to do it anymore. And I just saw how awesome it was for me to be able to take that break. And then also from checking my email obsessively. And I was like, you should start doing this too, Danny. It's really nice. And then again, like he started to remember what it was like. And like I came home one time and the table was set for Shabbat and he's like, let's try doing Shabbat this week. And I was so touched.
Wow.
But yeah, once he saw me doing it, he would ask me like, if we break up, are you still going to do this? Or are you just doing this for me? I'm like, no, I'm not doing this for you. It's actually what you don't want. So I'm doing it for me.
That was, do you know, like what drove him to actually keep that Shabbos? That's like a really beautiful, beautiful thing.
I mean, I think he just remembered what it was like to do Friday night dinner and to feel that calm and not have to be hustling, As a comedian in New York, you have to go out on the street and talk to tourists who don't know English and go, you want to come see a free comedy show? And then you go in the basement at 3 a.m. for like 10 people and they're all drunk and it's not nice. And he goes, once we started doing Shabbat, he's like, oh, this is so much better than doing that. So much nicer. So I think that's what he really liked about it.
Is that what the comedians need to do? Because that does not sound fun.
No, it's a very crazy industry. You really have to pay your dues, as they say, and you don't get paid for years. Most people don't make it, and then it's just a very non-religious environment. Is
that a joke?
Yeah, there's no one to sue, like with the Viacom case, because you're just doing it voluntarily.
Yeah, it's mostly unpaid work, and then the 1% gets the paid work, and that's it.
So I guess what's the next step from there?
The next step is we ended up leaving Brooklyn. I was going to convert with the RCA because I wanted halakhic conversion. And then we left New York because we had a bad neighbor who was becoming increasingly violent. We would get knife fights in our hallway. He would threaten us. And we lived on a fully gentrified block, except for the neighbor next to us wasn't. And so I was like, this has got to be a sign. And then, as I said, like all the receipts I found, and I said, if you want to do comedy, it's either New York or LA. We came out and visited the Jewish neighborhood here, Pico Robertson. And I had to stop doing it with the RCA because if you're converting, you have to be in the same city as the Beit Din. So I started learning with a woman here and I got a different Beit Din. And we moved here in 2012 and I learned for like 3 years. And then the week before our wedding, I ended up converting. But before that, I also wanted to make sure I visited Israel because it was ironic. In college, I had an anti-Israel professor and I became very anti-Israel, not knowing anything about it, not even connecting it to the Jewish people, just like I was taught that Israel did all these horrible things, stole the land from the Palestinians. And I was, until I met Danny, I had a very bad opinion on Israel. And so I wanted to see it for myself. I had changed my opinion at that point. But then once I saw what Israel was like, I went to seminary for 3 weeks. He went to yeshiva. It really honed it in. Like the number one thing that really stuck with me is that I would be sitting on a train next to a Muslim and I was like, I look Jewish and there was no problem. And all those things I learned in my class about Israel being an apartheid state and things like that, I was like, this is complete nonsense.
Wouldn't it be so nice if like people hear that, even in like the world at large, you know, the people who are critical of Israel and they adopt that type of behavior, like, hey, I think this, let me go check it out for myself. Let me actually go and see it. If I think there's apartheid, they'll see what actually is happening. And it's a message to like the world. And it's a message even within the Frum community. People have their differences. They think things about other people. Unless you're going to go and, you know, see it, or, you know, we learn you can't judge until you walk a mile in someone else's shoe. And, you know, really, you're not walking a mile in someone else's shoe. It's not possible. So don't judge, you know, like, but it'd be amazing if more people did what you did, which is, you know, I'm going to go see the curiosity to really go see what's the truth.
Yeah, it's so important for non-Jews, especially ones who have been taught very bad things, to go and see it for themselves. I remember I interviewed Miss Iraq once, and she had been taught all these bad things about Jews, that Israel was a horrible place, and she was scared there. She was scared they were going to kidnap her. Like, I don't know why she went, but she was scared they were going to kidnap her and torture her or something for being an Arab. And everyone was so nice. And she's like, and she fell in love with it. And I'm like,
yeah, it's like,
if only the world could see. They just don't want to see.
It's kind of like the thought of the day. You know, I hope YouTube doesn't like, I'm gonna have to mute out the name I say now. Like Candace Owens criticizing Lubavitch and Chabad and talking about the Lubavitch Aderba as if she actually knows. And what she said is just, it boggles the mind that people will so freely speak about things, people, and topics that they don't know all that much about. So
yeah,
that
really upset me. She said that, like, the Lubavitcher Rebbe said that Jews are, you know, Jewish supremacy is their new thing. Like, that is not true at all from personal experience. When I went to Chabad, they didn't care if I was a Jew. They gave me free food for years. They're so nice. They're just the nicest people. I see the way they treat their workers. It's just, you just hate Jews and you'll look for any excuse. But
yeah, it's so interesting, by the way. I didn't even think about it, but this is coming from somebody who was not Jewish. You were a convert and
uniquely positioned.
You're uniquely positioned to really address what she said, because she said that Chabad's opinion of non-Jews is X, Y, and Z, which is so erroneous that she said that. And you're somebody that was not Jewish, and the warmth of Chabad is what brought you in.
Yeah, and also just Orthodox Jews in general. Like, I always talk about this, the mainstream media demonizes us. They other us. When we were in Satmar, Williamsburg, people were super nice to us, even though we so clearly weren't Satmar. Nobody was ever mean to me about converting. Like, it was always like less religious Jews who would bring up things and say like, oh, did they reject you? It was never Orthodox Jews. Right. Non-Jews would be like mean about it sometimes. But yeah, Orthodox Jews were always so welcoming. They sent me to seminary before I was Jewish. It's just, we have the biggest hearts. I don't know. The Jewish people definitely have such big hearts and want to do so much good in the world. And it's really sad to see how tainted other people make us.
So you had mentioned you were learning for 3 years before converting, but you ended up converting a week before your wedding. Is that like what's expected? Is that custom for someone to be spending years studying before actually converting?
So part of it was Danny had this rule that he wanted to wait 5 years before he got married. So I started in 2010, I started going to Chabad and then doing some learning in New York in 2011 for a year. then in LA continued, because he's like, the earliest I get married is 2015 if we're still together. So that's why it took so long. But
sounds very promising, and
very romantic.
If I was a betting man, I'd say
usually you can do it in like a year, but it really depends on your Beit Din. I actually ended up getting a second conversion after, because my first one I tried to get accepted in Israel, and there's only 40 Beit Din around the world who are accepted in Israel. So I got a second one, the gold standard. And then that only took 5 months, because they're like, yeah, you're already halakhically a Jew, and you're Orthodox and everything. But if one day you want to move to Israel, or your kids do, it's good to get this gold standard.
That's wild. I actually interviewed this woman named Ayelet El Nakave, and she ended up having to do 3 conversions. And one of them also because Israel didn't recognize it. So it's like, I wonder if that happens more than we even realize. That people have to go through
if you ever see Yisrael Campbell's story, he did Reform, Conservative, and then Orthodox.
That's wow.
Yeah. So yeah, it does happen. And unfortunately, a lot of people also discover, hey, my mom wasn't Jewish and I'm not actually halakhically a Jew, or, her conversion wasn't so great. Like when they're going to get married, for example, and they check the ketubah and things like that. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that, A, I wanted to do Orthodox anyway, but B, just that like my kids wouldn't have any problems or anything.
Talk about dotting I's and crossing T's.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you convert and then you get married.
Yeah. Beautiful ceremony. Again, like what drew me to Judaism was just everything I learned in the Torah, but also the community. Just so special. Everyone from the community came together. People, we didn't have so much money. People like offered to bartend for free and party plan at a discount and make our ketubah at a discount. And just everyone was so nice. And I just felt so much love, in that moment at my wedding. And it was just so special. And I love that we didn't see each other for the week leading up to it. I thought that was a great, great custom that non-Jews and secular people should also do. Because
what did you appreciate so much about that?
If you don't see each other, you're not fighting.
That's good.
There's a lot of tension right up to the wedding, and it's not even the big stuff, it's the little stuff. It's like we didn't get enough tablecloths and things like that. Like, did you remember this and this and this? And so I was just happy to have that space. And then every day leading up to it, Danny sent me a gift, which was really nice. And it just, when we saw each other, we cried our eyes out, and it was just so special.
That's really nice. I'm curious where your family's opinion is, your mother, your father, other family members, of you converting to Judaism. What do they think?
Yeah. So my mom got it right away. Like when I told her at the beginning, I said, I think I'm going to become a Jew. And she's like, that makes sense. You grew up isolated, because your father and I divorced, and you spent a lot of time alone, so it makes sense that you'd want a community. And my dad, for some reason, has always liked movies about the Holocaust and Jewish things. And he started sending me all these movie recommendations and gave me a Hanukkah puzzle. And my sister would give me kosher food when I came to town. But yeah, they're not religious. They don't go to church or anything like that. So it wasn't like I was leaving Christianity, really.
That's amazing. People's reaction, like your father's reactions, like watch Schindler's List. Oh, you're Jewish. Your sister, like here's Kugel. Like, yeah, it's actually pretty funny to see everyone's reaction. You should have like, it would have been probably like a TikTok trend if you like videoed telling my family I'm now Jewish.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's super easy because we go home to Baltimore, and 7 Mile Market is just the best supermarket. Kosher crab cakes all the way. But yeah, I love going home to Baltimore, and like I never was in that community before, and I go home and I'm like, oh, it's so cool that I can go back and be part of this community for like 1 week a year. And yeah, my family's familiar with Jews and Jewish customs because of it, because they live there.
So they're respectful of the life that you chose to leave, you and your husband.
Yeah, when they visit, they don't quite understand that they can't use my plates for their taco stand food, or that I won't turn the lights off, or that I leave the hot plate on. Like my dad's like, aren't you scared this is going to cause a fire? I'm like, yeah, but Like, we take our precautions and we have faith. And he's like, okay. So.
Or you could like say, I'd love if this hot plate turned off.
He started recommending the movie Backdraft.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is a movie about fire.
Oh, I didn't. How am I supposed to know that?
Yeah. It's like from back in the day.
1982?
I don't know. The 80s, 90s, something back there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Backdraft.
Because he expressed fear about fire, and he's the movie recommender.
I get it.
Put the whole joke together for
I
us.
just didn't know the movie. That's really cool. What is one maybe misconception or something you think that non-Jews might think about, specifically Orthodox Jews, that because you've been on both sides, you'd be able to speak to it and say, oh, you got it all wrong?
I think there's two things. The first is that women are oppressed, because we're not. I'm certainly not. Nobody told me to cover my hair. Nobody told me to do all these things. Husband doesn't control my life. And just because something's traditional doesn't mean that one party or the other is oppressed. Just Ashad Chayil, I remember early on, I was like, how can people say women are oppressed when they hear this beautiful song every week about how they go out and they work and they stay at home and they take care of the home and they're so empowered. And also the fact that Jewish women, that's what determines if a child is Jewish, whereas other religions, it's the male. So yeah, that's one thing that really bugs me. And the second thing is that people think that Jews are so insular that we look down on other people, even on fellow Jews. I remember like my friends who are not religious saying, those Hasidic Jews, they're always judging me. It's like, no, they're not. You're not really even on their radar. Like, I think you're going around Hasidic people and you're feeling these feelings about yourself for not being quote unquote Jewish enough, but they don't care. Like, they're nice people, especially Chabad. They just want you to have a nice experience and they don't expect anything in return. So, the media always makes it look like being an Orthodox Jew is this traumatizing, horrible thing with outdated, backwards rules. And it's quite the opposite. And it's so warm and welcoming, even to non-Jews. So yeah, we just respect all people because we are all God's children. We truly believe that.
And what is something that, having been on both sides, that you would say that you wish or you think as a Frum community we can do better?
One thing that really gets to me is all the gashmias, all the luxury lifestyle, which we take too much from secular culture. I think there's just way too much pressure on Frum families now to look a certain way, drive a certain car, have a big house, things like that. And that's not what it's all about. I'm actually happier when I'm minimalist, when I get rid of things, when I don't focus on money, when I go to the park for free. I think that's really important, not to let that other culture that has infected America to seep into our culture as well. And then what was the other side that you wanted?
No, that was it. That's very profound, and it's something that we speak about all the time. And it's interesting because like you even went to Chabad because you guys were going to get a free meal. So speak about minimalist, like that's how you ended up being Jewish in a way.
Yeah. And I, like when we first started out, we were very poor, I was making like $150 a week. Thank God, I've made more to keep up with the costs of being a religious Jew. There's just so many. But yeah, that I would really like to see that change because there's too much pressure on people these days anyway. And we don't have to look at social media and think, oh, I need this and this and this. Like what your soul really needs is just a good connection with Hashem, to be surrounded by people you love, things like that.
That's great.
Gewalt.
I think that you recently had I saw like a tweet that went like insanely viral. So like that's something that your advocacy that you're online right now. What was that tweet again? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah,
that was about anti-Semitism and how Candace got it wrong.
Yeah.
About the Rebbe and everything. One thing that really gets me upset is to see Jews at war with each other. Because it's like on social media where one person says, oh, if you vote for this candidate, you're an idiot. You're the downfall of our people. You're an heir of whatever it is, I just really don't like that. I think we're missing the point. And I always think back to the Rebbe, like when I'm not Chabad, but was just so inspirational. Like the Rebbe would welcome everyone in, no matter what their politics or their background. And if I get upset with someone who has different politics from me or different viewpoint or different observance, I try not to judge them. I try to put myself in their shoes and just think, would I want them yelling at me for my opinion? No. So I think that as a people, we need to work on that. And I never put out anything about politics or anything disparaging of other Jews, because we need to be unified, especially in a post-October 7th world. So everything I do is inspirational, uplifts people. I call it timeline cleansers, because we need that. We need less negativity. We need more unity.
For sure. When I hear you say, I'm not Chabad, I'm reminded that Chabad is actually an acronym that stands for Chachma, Bina, and Das, which are the faculties of the Moyach, the faculties of the mind. And the process starts with Chachma, and then it develops further with Bina, of understanding. And then Das is that connector between that which we know and that which we experience in our heart. And in that sense, you really, really followed your faculties of mind. And in that sense, you are a queen of Chabad. And now you've introduced that and experienced that within your life on a daily basis.
Yeah, I don't keep Halav Yisrael. I like M&Ms. Sorry, Rebbe.
Hershey?
Yeah, that's just what I meant. But I have such great respect for them. Whenever we travel, we shout out to Chabad of the Big Island in Hawaii. They're amazing, but amazing everywhere. And all Jews are amazing. Love them all.
That was an amazing reaction, though. Like, what if you could have Reese's? Would you be Chabad? You're able to eat Reese's Puffs. No,
I connect more to. I really like especially on Yom Kippur, going to my husband's Sephardic synagogue. We go to both. Pico Robertson's a very diverse community. I'd say probably mostly Persian. So funny. I wanted to learn Hebrew better, and the rabbi's like, "You should learn Farsi." Honestly,
that's great.
I learned how to make gourmet sabzi. What was that?
Sephardim are the best. Like they are the best. They're emunah pshuta. They're emunas chachamim. The way that what Rabbi says is that's what it is. So it's a really amazing community that you're part of. If you had a message for the Jewish world, you get to stand up on a stage. There's a mic and there's 5 million people just sitting there, and you have one sentence to say. What are you saying to them?
It's a big venue.
Yeah, big venue. It's not the Garden. It's
Wow. Believe in God. Oh man, that's more than one sentence. I'd say everything will be okay because Hashem is in control.
By the Grammys, they don't worry. It's
soft parameters on the prompt. Soft parameters.
Yeah, I'd say everything will be okay because Hashem is in control.
That's beautiful.
Something comforting, and yeah.
The last thing I want to ask you, your name is Kylie Ora Lobell. I imagine you chose the name Ora.
Yeah. So my friend Daniel, my husband's friend, Seth Glass, of blessed memory, he was a musician, very soulful guy, and he said, "You're the light. You should be Ora." And I said, "I love that." And then I chose for the first name Ronit, which means joyous singer. Because Danny said, before you pick a Hebrew name, you were depressed in the past. Why don't you pick a name that means something uplifting and joyful? And that has really worked. I went from being, lonely, sad all the time, feeling anxious. I still sometimes feel those feelings. I'm a human, but it doesn't rule my life now. Now, most days, most of the time, I'm very grateful, inspired, live a meaningful life. I have to drop the word meaningful.
Of course.
And it's deeper than happiness. It's a joy for living. So
that's really beautiful. I'm so happy you came here to share your story of you and your husband as well. It is an amazing journey. Nicholas Sparks couldn't even write this up probably the way it happened. He's an author. He writes books.
I'm familiar.
But Kylie Ora, thank you so much for coming on the Meaningful People podcast to share your story. And hopefully we'll catch up with you sometime soon. Thank you.
Give
our love to Daniel, by the way.
Yeah.
I will.
Love that guy.
He sends it back, I'm sure.
Thank you, everybody, for watching this episode or listening to this episode of the Meaningful People podcast. Once again, if you're watching or or listening, head over to YouTube. Leave a comment on this video. Where are you watching this video from? Where in the world? It could be you commented last time we asked this question, but go again. Where in the world are you watching this episode from? It could be Mauritius, it could be South Africa, it could be Australia, it could be Muncie, Brooklyn. We want to know where you're watching it from. We love, finding out more about our audience. So go ahead and leave that comment below. I hope to see you October 6th in Brooklyn, New York. Free admission, valet parking. It's going to be a big event with Rabbi Shlomo Farchi and Maya Namdar. I cannot wait to see you there. Register now at meaningfulminute.org. Yes, we have another episode of Meaningful People coming your way next week, October 5th, Matzei Rosh Hashanah, Be'ezus Hashem. A very important episode. So hit that subscribe button, leave a rating, leave a review. Wishing you all a beautiful Yom Tif, asking for mechila to all of you on mine and Momo's behalf. If we've ever said anything or done anything that didn't meet the standards that we like to keep. So thank you so much. Have a k'siva v'chesima tova.